My name is Lily Sullivan, and I'm 32 years old. For 15 years, my wealthy parents treated me like their personal servant, while my younger sister Sarah lived like royalty. Every holiday, every family gathering, I was relegated to the kitchen, while she entertained guests and basked in their admiration. But last Christmas Eve, when my mother demanded I cook for 25 of Sarah's VIP friends with just 24 hours' notice, something inside me finally snapped. What happened next didn't just change our family dynamic. It exposed a secret that left everyone, including a Fortune 500 CEO, completely speechless. The guest list included Victoria Chen, CEO of Pinnacle Corporation, the same woman I was scheduled to meet in Florida the next day to finalize a $2 million contract for my company. Yes, my company. The one my family knew nothing about. You see, while they assumed I was unemployed and living paycheck to paycheck, I had quietly built Stellar Events into a luxury catering empire with 50 employees across 3 locations. I had deliberately chosen success without their permission, money, or even their knowledge. And that Christmas Eve ultimatum forced me to make an impossible choice. Serve the CEO who was about to make me wealthy while pretending to be a failure, or finally choose my reality over their narrative. Before I tell you how I went from being the family maid to having my parents beg for my forgiveness, please take a moment to like and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy stories about justice being served. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to that December evening when everything changed forever. Understanding my story requires understanding how a successful person becomes invisible in their own family. This systematic erasure didn't happen overnight. It was carefully constructed over 15 years of strategic dismissal and willful ignorance that began when I was just 17 years old. The pattern crystallized during family gatherings where roles were clearly defined. Sarah sparkled in designer dresses, while I worked behind the scenes in aprons. My parents' friends knew Sarah's college plans, career aspirations, and dating life in intimate detail. They knew me as the helpful one, who made excellent appetizers, but had no identity beyond my utility to the family. The most telling incident happened during Sarah's high school graduation party. While I spent 14 hours preparing food for 200 guests, Sarah held court in a $3,000 dress our parents purchased specifically for the occasion. When guests asked about my plans, my mother would literally redirect conversations back to Sarah's achievements. "Sarah's going to study communications at a prestigious university," she'd beam, while I stood there holding serving trays, invisible in plain sight. During my college years, I started a small catering business to pay for school, working weekends and summers to build a client base. When I excitedly told my family about landing my first country club contract, my mother's response was devastating in its casual dismissal. "That's nice, dear, but don't let it interfere with your real responsibilities." Those real responsibilities meant being available to cook whenever they needed me, regardless of my own commitments or aspirations. Meanwhile, Sarah's internship at a small PR firm was celebrated with a family dinner at their most expensive restaurant. Her first client, a local yoga studio, was discussed with the reverence most families reserve for Nobel Prize announcements. The message was crystal clear. Sarah's career mattered. Mine was a hobby that shouldn't inconvenience the family. This dismissal became so complete that they stopped asking basic questions about my life. When I moved to Manhattan, they assumed it was a studio apartment funded by inheritance money from my grandmother. They never visited, never asked for my address, never wondered how I afforded rent in one of the world's most expensive cities. Their assumption that I was perpetually struggling became gospel truth, repeated so often that questioning it seemed impossible. The systematic invisibility extended to every aspect of family life. My childhood bedroom was converted to Sarah's closet space without consultation. My achievements were forgotten, while Sarah's smallest victories were celebrated with champagne toasts. When I mentioned business trips, they were dismissed as little cooking jobs that couldn't possibly conflict with family obligations. The most painful part wasn't the dismissal itself, but how thoroughly they had convinced themselves of their own narrative. At family gatherings, my mother would introduce Sarah as our successful daughter in public relations, while I was simply, "Lily's here too, she's helping with the cooking." Not our daughter who runs her own business, or even our daughter who's building something, just helping. as if I had no identity beyond my utility to them. The genius of this system was how it made my own success feel illegitimate. If my own family couldn't see my worth, how could I trust that it was real? For years, I found myself minimizing achievements, speaking vaguely about work, avoiding conversations about my life. I had internalized their narrative so completely that I began to doubt my own reality, questioning whether my accomplishments mattered if the people who were supposed to love me most couldn't even see them. While my family perfected their narrative of my failure, I was quietly building something extraordinary. Stellar Events didn't start as an act of rebellion. It started as survival. I needed to prove to myself that I was more than the family servant, even if I was the only witness to that proof. The beginning was humble but determined. Using $5,000 saved from waiting tables during college, I registered Stellar Events LLC in 2019. I deliberately chose a name that didn't include Sullivan, wanting to succeed or fail on merit alone, without the weight of family expectations or the burden of their assumptions. My first client paid me $300 for a corporate lunch for 15 people, and I felt like I'd conquered the world. What started as weekend catering jobs slowly expanded into something substantial. I rented a small commercial kitchen space in Queens and hired my first employee, Maria, a talented chef who'd been overlooked by traditional restaurants because she lacked formal training. Like me, she was hungry to prove herself. Together, we began building something that valued talent over pedigree, results over reputation. The growth was methodical and strategic. Every profit was reinvested into better equipment, more skilled staff, or expanded services. Within 2 years, I had secured my first major contract with a boutique hotel chain. The $50,000 deal felt massive at the time, but it was just the beginning. Word spread through New York's hospitality industry about the small catering company that consistently delivered excellence without the drama that plagued larger firms. By year 3, Stellar Events had moved to a proper facility in Manhattan and employed 15 people. We weren't just catering anymore. We were creating experiences. Corporate retreats, luxury weddings, charity galas, product launches. Each event was an opportunity to exceed expectations and build relationships that would fuel future growth. My client list began including names that would impress anyone, but I had no one to share them with. The secrecy wasn't initially intentional. I had tried to share early successes with my family, but their dismissive responses taught me that my achievements were unwelcome interruptions to their established narrative. When I mentioned landing the hotel contract, my mother immediately pivoted to Sarah's latest PR campaign for an energy drink company. "That's nice, dear," she said, patting my hand like I was a child showing her a crayon drawing. "But Sarah's work is really taking off." So I stopped sharing. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Their inability to see my success was damaging my ability to believe in it. I needed to protect my growing confidence from their casual dismissal. Stellar Events became my secret garden, a place where my worth was measured by results, not family politics. The irony was delicious. While they worried about my unemployment and urged me to find something stable, I was employing 50 people across 3 locations. While they assumed I was struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment, I was living in a 2-bedroom condo overlooking Central Park. While they introduced me as their unemployed daughter who cooks sometimes, I was being featured in industry publications and nominated for prestigious awards. My phone would buzz with texts from my assistant. "Forbes wants to feature you in their 40 Under 40 issue. They're especially interested in your story of building the business without family support." Without family support. If only Forbes knew how profoundly true that was. My family hadn't just withheld support. They had been actively blind to my existence beyond their kitchen. The most satisfying moment came when I realized I no longer needed their validation. Stellar Events had grown beyond my wildest expectations, not because of family support, but despite family indifference. The call that changed everything came on December 23rd, while I was in my Manhattan office reviewing the contract that would transform Stellar Events from a regional success story into a national powerhouse. The Pinnacle Hospitality deal represented everything I'd worked toward. $2 million in guaranteed revenue, exclusive catering rights to 5 luxury resorts, and the kind of partnership that would establish my company among the industry's elite. Cancel whatever silly plans you have for tomorrow. My mother's voice cut through my concentration without even a greeting. Her tone carried that familiar note of absolute authority, the one that had commanded my compliance for 15 years. Sarah's hosting her networking group for Christmas Eve dinner. 25 guests, including executives from Pinnacle Corporation. The irony hit me like a physical blow. Pinnacle Corporation, the same company whose CEO, Victoria Chen, I was scheduled to meet in Florida on December 26th. The same Victoria Chen who would be sitting at my parents' dinner table tomorrow night, expecting to be served by their unemployed daughter, while having no idea she was about to partner with that same daughter's company. My mother continued with her usual commanding efficiency. You'll need to arrive by noon to start cooking. 7 main courses, 10 sides. The menu's already planned. Sarah's making important connections that benefit this family. You should be grateful to help. Grateful, the word that had defined our relationship for so long. It's not like you have anything else going on, she added with casual cruelty. I looked at my plane ticket. Flight 447 to Fort Lauderdale, departing 8 p.m. December 24th. Next to it lay the Pinnacle contract, already reviewed by my legal team. On my laptop screen, an email from Victoria Chen glowed. Looking forward to finally meeting you in person, Lily. I've been following Stellar Events growth for 2 years. Your reputation precedes you. The choice crystallized with startling clarity. I could continue playing the role they'd assigned me, serving the CEO who was about to make me wealthy while pretending to be a failure, or I could finally choose my reality over their narrative. Mom, I can't do it, I said quietly. I have a business trip. I'm flying to Florida tonight. The silence stretched before exploding into disbelief. Don't be ridiculous. What possible business could you have? She actually laughed. Lily, stop being selfish. Your sister needs this. Sarah can hire a caterer. With what money? Do you know how expensive that is? The irony of her asking me about catering costs while talking to someone who owned a catering company was almost too much. Family comes first, she snapped. Or are you too selfish to understand that? I understand perfectly. Family comes first when you need something from me. How dare you? When's the last time you asked about my life, Mom? We know about your life. You're between jobs, living in that tiny apartment. I'm a CEO. Another laugh, this one cruel. A CEO of what? Your imaginary company? It's not imaginary. I have 50 employees. Lily, enough with the fantasies. Sarah needs this. You owe us. I looked at my business class ticket, at the contract that would secure my future, at the life I'd built in secret. Then I guess this is goodbye, I said quietly. If you leave, don't bother coming back. The threat hung between us, the same one she'd used so many times before. Usually it worked. Usually I caved. Not this time. I'm done being the family servant, Mom. I'm done being invisible until you need something. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but for the first time in 15 years, it wasn't from fear or anger. It was from freedom. While I slept peacefully in my Florida resort suite, chaos erupted in Connecticut with the precision of a perfectly orchestrated disaster. The text messages I read the following morning painted a picture of social catastrophe that was both inevitable and deeply satisfying. By 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve, my mother had finally accepted that I wasn't coming. The pristine kitchen remained empty, and 25 hungry VIP guests were arriving in an hour. Sarah's panicked text told the story. Mom's losing it. She's calling every restaurant in a 50-mile radius. Everything's closed. How could you do this to us? At 7 p.m. sharp, the doorbell began ringing. Investment bankers, PR executives, and most importantly, Victoria Chen arrived expecting an elaborate home-cooked Christmas Eve feast. Instead, they found my mother frantically explaining a family emergency while my father stood helplessly in the background. Sarah's text at 7:23 p.m. captured the growing desperation. We're ordering pizza. Lily, pizza. Do you understand what you've done? The image was almost too perfect. My mother, who had spent years cultivating a reputation for elegant entertaining, now frantically calling Papa John's and Domino's because no single chain could handle a last-minute order for 25 people. The pizza arrived at 8:15 p.m. in a parade of delivery cars. My mother, who owned Waterford Crystal and Sterling Silver with the family monogram, was now serving delivery pizza on her most precious china. But the real catastrophe wasn't the food. It was the explanation. Unable to admit that her daughter had other commitments, my mother chose to protect Sarah's networking opportunity by throwing me completely under the bus. According to Sarah's increasingly frantic texts, our mother spent the entire evening painting me as mentally unstable, unreliable, and a perpetual disappointment. Victoria Chen looked increasingly uncomfortable as the evening progressed, eating pizza while listening to a mother publicly humiliate her absent daughter. The next morning, December 26th, I stood in Pinnacle's boardroom ready to close the deal of my lifetime. Everything was proceeding perfectly until Victoria's assistant walked in with an iPad. "Ms. Chen, you need to see this. There's a photo from that Connecticut party going viral on LinkedIn." I watched Victoria's face transform as she processed what she was seeing. A family photo from my parents' wall where I stood in the background, barely visible, while Sarah posed front and center. "Lily," Victoria said slowly. "This photo from the Sullivan house in Connecticut." "Is this you?" The moment of truth had arrived. Yes. Margaret Sullivan is my mother. The room fell completely silent. Victoria's team exchanged glances as they processed this impossible coincidence. "The woman who called you unreliable, mentally unstable, and unemployable is your mother?" "Yes." Victoria stood up, walked to the window, then turned back. "You were supposed to cook that dinner. The one that turned into a pizza disaster." "I was, but I was here, meeting with you. I chose my business over being treated like a servant." Victoria started laughing, not politely, but with genuine amazement. She spent the entire evening complaining about her disappointment of a daughter. "And that daughter is you, the CEO I've been trying to partner with for 2 years. Victoria pulled out her phone and began typing. "I'm posting a photo of this contract signing on LinkedIn," she announced with a mischievous smile. "I'm tagging Stellar Events, Pinnacle Hospitality, and Margaret Sullivan of Connecticut." The post read, "Thrilled to announce our partnership with Stellar Events and their brilliant CEO, Lily Sullivan. Amazing to work with someone who built their empire from scratch." Within minutes, my phone showed 47 missed calls from my mother. The truth was finally out. The social fallout landed fast and brutal, but not for me. Victoria's LinkedIn post raced through our Connecticut social circle like wildfire. When the Forbes 40 Under 40 cover story went live at midnight featuring my photo and the headline, "From Invisible to Invaluable, How Lily Sullivan Built a Catering Empire," without a dollar of family money, the damage to my family's reputation became irreversible. Sarah's panic texts told the story of their social collapse. Pinnacle just canceled our PR contract. Victoria Chen said they don't work with people who lack family values. That was a $500,000 annual loss. Mom got removed from 3 charity boards. Dad's golf buddies are asking how he didn't know his own. Daughter was a millionaire. The contrast between my family's Thanksgiving photo, where I lurked in the background like hired, help, and my Forbes cover became country club legend. Margaret Sullivan, who had bragged about her entertaining for years, serving Papa John's on Waterford Crystal, while her CEO daughter was signing million-dollar deals. While their reputation crumbled, my life exploded in the best possible way. Within a week of the Forbes publication, Stellar Events received over 200 inquiries. Victoria became my biggest champion, introducing me to her network and telling everyone about the Christmas Eve disaster with barely concealed glee. "Imagine having a golden goose in your house and treating it like a servant duck," she'd say. 3 major contracts came from those introductions, worth a combined $10 million. I hired 20 new employees, promoted Maria to executive chef and James to COO. The Food Network pitched a documentary, Invisible to Invaluable, the Lily Sullivan story. My father finally called me directly, something he hadn't done in years. "I knew you were doing something with catering," he admitted. "I saw the business registration years ago when mail got mixed up, but your mother was so certain about who you were supposed to be. I should have spoken up. I'm ashamed. Why didn't you?" I asked. "Because it was easier to let her narrative stand than to fight it. Your success is remarkable, and we missed it because we weren't looking." 3 months later, I agreed to meet my family at a neutral restaurant in Manhattan. They looked different, smaller somehow. Before anyone spoke, I placed a single sheet of paper on the table. These are my terms, I said. Equal respect or no contact. No more servant treatment ever. Public acknowledgement of my success. Genuine apology, not just words. Family and individual therapy. Non-negotiable. Sarah spoke first. I was jealous. You were always better at everything, but Mom made me feel special by making you feel small. I see how sick that was now. Our therapist says we created a system where someone had to be the scapegoat. That was you. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, not just for Christmas Eve, but for 15 years of blindness. I turned you into a servant because I couldn't bear that you might be more successful than the life I'd planned for you. I'll consider it, I said, but I'm not returning to the old roles. And Mom, you're paying full price if you ever want Stellar Events to cater anything. For the first time in months, she smiled. Fair. 6 months later, I hosted my first family dinner in my actual apartment, the 2-bedroom condo overlooking Central Park they'd never known existed. My team catered because I no longer cooked for family gatherings. That boundary would never be crossed again. As my parents sat at my dining table being served by employees who called me boss, I raised my glass. Success doesn't need permission. Self-worth doesn't require validation, and respect is non-negotiable. Today, Stellar Events employs over 100 people across 5 cities. My mother spent months in therapy and publicly apologized at the country club. Sarah's firm lost major clients, but she humbly submitted a proposal for our PR needs, and it was good enough that we're considering it. My father now introduces me as my daughter the CEO with genuine pride. But the biggest change lives in my mirror. Every morning I remind myself, I'm Lily Sullivan, CEO of Stellar Events, not the family servant. Never again. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or been treated like your success doesn't matter, you'll understand why boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose yourself over family expectations? What boundary changed your life? Drop your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And tell me, in that boardroom moment with Victoria, would you have revealed the connection immediately or waited for the perfect timing? If this story resonated with you, subscribe for more true stories about people who refuse to stay small. Share this with someone who needs the reminder that they're not obligated to set themselves on fire to keep others warm. Until next time, remember, know your worth, then add tax.